Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be in God's presence, particularly for me to be part of this great event. It is blessed to be invited again. I'm so thankful to the organizers for allowing me to speak on this occasion. I'm also thankful to Phil for the message. Such a brilliant concept, such a brilliant presentation. And it is so difficult to speak the second message or the next message in response to that in view of the overall theme that we have, because he has set it up in such a way, reminding me of those complex areas of philosophical reflections that have gone into the history of time. It's an amazing reality. I would say time is the soul of existence. Whether we like it or not, we are caught up by it. Whether we like it or not, it is going to sweep us and carry us to life beyond here and now. What a theme it is. Life. What is the point? This theme is so dear to me. I have done my research in this 3.5 years of study around one man's concept of life in the context of narrative, interpretation, and so on. Still, the question remains to me, what is life? Life, what is the point? Let's start thinking about these questions. What is the nature of human life? Who am I? And then what is a dream? Is there any connection between these two questions? Human life is such a unique reality on earth. Why is it so unique? People in every age, in every generation, raise this question: what is life? What is time? What is the meaning of life? Ultimately, who am I? Now, the uniqueness of human life, already, some of us use the word existentialism. Every time, if I use the word existentialism in this speech, I am using it for an existentialism or a reality with God. Don't hold me negative, because there's a godless existentialism on the other hand. Why is life unique on the earth? Because life is constituted by three specific realities. Simply, we can say in terms of time, that is past, future, and present. As Phil already explained to us, past is memory, or it is history, or it could be said something that happened, a lived experience of our life. What is future? Future could be the goals, plans, projects, expectations, and hopes in different contexts, different terminology. And then what is then present? Present is the presence. In other words, it is the conscious, attentive aspect of life, reflective aspect of life here and now. The uniqueness of life lies in the fact that my current consciousness, current thinkings, and my reflective life now is the presentation, or it is the present of the past, present of the future, and the present of the present, because it is the present. It's playing with terms. In other words, what I have gone through, my training, experience, my community experience, my family experience, all that went into my past is making a contribution to who I am now. So I have the presence of the past, now, here and now, in this conscious life. And then, what I wanted to become, my ambitions, goals, future, hope, expectations, are providing me meaning, direction, sense of destiny to live now. So, I'm pulling the past to here and now. I'm pulling the future here and now, and then begin to live the presence of the past and the presence of the future here and now as my present. Now, what is the uniqueness in this? The uniqueness is, as soon as my consciousness, my attention, my presence or awareness of the presence comes to an end, which is death, or a brain death, whatever, my past fades away, my future fades away from my awareness, and my present comes to cease. That's what we call death. Now, in this situation, the uniqueness of human life is, as some scholars, starting from Augustine, coming down to Paul Ricoeur, postmodern, present, and contemporary, the meditation of time, they said, does past exist? No. Does future exist? No. Why? The past does not exist because it is far gone. The future does not exist as an existence because it is not yet here. What does exist? Nothing. Does the present exist? No, because it does not last. Then what is life? Life is that unique fraction of time in which we are given it as a gift to act, reflect, and live. That is just this. Just this second is what we call life. What makes life unique is the choice we make how to live. This is why, if somebody is asking the ultimate question of life, who am I? Xavier, who are you? After you have lived 48 years on this earth, who are you? Xavier cannot answer this question by giving a statement. Rather, he has to go into three major areas of life, ask three set of questions, which can write volumes after volumes. The first question, Xavier, where do you come from? A question of origin, a question of source, a question of derivation, a question that will answer, where are you coming from? Who gave you the shape? Who gave you the origin and the formation of your life that you think your life? The second set of questions. Now you can bring all the philosophies and categorize them there, like starting from all the creation, all the Big Bang, and all the evolution with all the multitude of views. I will leave it with you. Second set of questions. Xavier, where are you going? It's a question of destiny. What is the ultimate end of your life? Where are you going to head and end? That's a question of destiny. Now you can see the two spectrums, beginning and the end, coming down to answer the question of who I am. The third set of questions, what is the meaning of life? Why are you here? Why am I here? I'm not talking about this speech here. Why am I here on the earth? What is the purpose of life? Is there any purpose that is attached to my life as I live in this world? Is there anything that I have to accomplish? Is there anything specific and significant that I can leave for the next generation? All these questions, which are really people are struggling with for ages, can answer the one specific question: who is Xavier? Who am I? A question of identity. Now, the engine room that produces the energy for finding that answer to the question, who am I, is what we call a dream, generally. What is a dream? I'm not talking about dream in terms of last night while I was sleeping, a cat was jumping on me and I got up off the bed. My God, I need to see a counselor. No, I'm not talking about that. Dream, as a scholar said in this century, is something that does not let you sleep. Not something that you see in the sleep, rather something that does not let you sleep. An ambition, a goal, a passion that makes you to strive, set up a decisive pursuit of life. This is what in philosophy they call the passion for the possible. And Martin Heidegger, a great 19th, 20th century scholar, came to the conclusion there is a dead end to this pursuit of life. That is, the awareness of the impossibility of the possibility of existence, which is death. I'll come to that after a while. So what is the dream? Dream is the engine room that gives you the energy to strive to find that answer. Who am I? Where am I coming from? Where am I going? Why am I here? What constitutes who I am in this life? So it is the passion. This is why someone said, greater the vision of life, deeper the passion. Deeper the passion that you have in relation to the vision you have about your life, the effort, the outcome is going to be super. In other words, the greater you can see of your life, the deeper it's going to touch in your heart and it's going to involve you into it. The deeper you are going to involve, you can go just like this, vibrant, energetic, powerful. And there's no limitation to getting up in the morning, in a cold morning, and you will jump off the bed and we will go. That's what we call dream. But my speech today is taking this down to a specific contextual level of thinking. That is, Australian dream, what is the point? Until I got this topic, I was not aware of the fact that there is a specific Australian dream as a concept or as a reality, okay? But I'm an Australian. Australian dream, what is the point? First of all, I'm going to explore a little bit about what is the Australian dream. And it is amazing to see how this is being framed. My reading goes into the starting point of that right after the World War II. And then it goes to a number of levels. The terminology is Great Australian Dream. The terminology has been used classically and traditionally for some specific purposes, which I will focus. But in the recent times, The terminology was used in various levels. Like, for example, there's a TV series in the contemporary times which talks about racial identity and gender identity, using the Australian Great Dream. And then also we have a movie in 2020 which talks about Australian Dream as racial identity and discrimination and all those stuff. We understand what that is. That's none of my business here. If you ask me today in 2020, at this moment, what is the Australian dream? I'm sure 99% of Australians would say, I want to travel free. In other words, I want the freedom to travel. Because we are in the pandemic where we are in isolation, in separation, in lockdown situation. We want the freedom to travel. Hooray! Flights, international borders opening, and so on. But if you ask me the same question, Xavier, what is your dream 12 weeks ago? I would have said, help me to access some toilet rolls. But let me explain to you the classical notion of Australian dream. What is it? And then we will go from there. What is the point? The traditional understanding of the great Australian dream is this. I'm quoting from a source that we can trust. A belief that in Australia, home ownership can lead to a better life, and it is an expression of success and security. Typically, it is focused upon ownership of a detached house on a quarter-acre suburban block surrounded by a garden which featured in the back a Hills hoist and a barbecue. The dilemma I have now, moving into Riverstone, is where am I going to put my barbecue? There's no backyard. This is the typical, classical, traditional, great dream of life in Australia. Okay? Now, one research shows when asked 11 questions or 12 questions, what is their dream? 57% said, we want a lifestyle of my choice or our choice. We want to live as we want it. 54% said we want financial freedom and independence. That's what our dream. 49% said safety and security. 41% said we want to have a home. 41% said we want a family. 40% said we want to pursue our hobbies and interests in life. 38% said having no regrets in life. We want to live to the full, okay, let's say, and then end of the day, we want to die in peace. No regrets, no guilt. And then 38% said, time for those I love. 37% said, preparing for a retirement. That's the next message coming up. And 36% said, traveling the world. 11% said, I want to impact the community. Now, if you look through all this, the dream consists of a framework. The framework is very much confined to this world. It has nothing about an eternal hope. It has nothing about life beyond, and it is very much confined to this worldly. But we are not saying these things are bad, not at all, okay? Thus, the great Australian dream can be defined as the ability to have the lifestyle of their choice, to be able to create safety and security for their family, own a home, pursue hobbies, free up time with those they love, all without fear of regret. Now, what's the problem with this dream? Is there any problem with this dream? Now, it's a matter of framework. As already Brother Phil said, God created a framework and placed us in that framework. Whether we like it or not, that framework places us in spite of what we do. Okay? That does not mean our free will as such is eliminated from the framework. It's part of the game. Now, what I'm going to do, keeping that Australian dream in view, I'm going to run that dream through Ecclesiastes and see how that works. And then I will say, what is the problem with Ecclesiastes and what is the problem with the dream? Okay? I'm not a negative speaker today. As I mentioned, the Australian dream lacks something. We are going to apply a framework with God to see the Australian dream. What the Ecclesiastes preacher wanted to say. He would say pleasure is meaningless. As we have already listened to Phil's talk, the whole book of Ecclesiastes is looking like a pessimistic outlook of life, isn't it? The opening sentence itself is meaningless. Meaningless. Everything under the sun is meaningless. Life is meaningless. Everything that we think is meaningless. Everything that we pursue is meaningless. Some people have taken a quick, hasty decision to say the writer of the book of Ecclesiastes is a pessimist. Trust me, he is not a pessimist. He is a realist. He is looking at existence on its own rights. Just like the Australian dream, that dream saying, I want a home, I want a barbecue, I want a garden, I want to travel, I want financial freedom, I want that, this, everything confined to one bottle, that is this world. And this man, preacher of all preachers, the philosopher of all philosophers, the king of all kings except Christ, is saying, I considered everything. And now I am seeming like to be a pessimist, which I am not. I'm a realist. I will tell you that in the next session or section of this speech. He says, pleasure is meaningless. He is going to apply. He's a learner in practice. In other words, he wanted to learn practicing what he is reflecting. If you explore Aristotle, Plato, they would say the superior wisdom is learning in doing. Practical wisdom. This philosopher is not a theorist. Or, let me say, he is not just a theorist. He is not just a philosopher sitting in an armchair and writing books after books just like we people do. Rather than writing books, I don't know, he wrote Ecclesiastes even. I don't know. Maybe somebody else put it together. That's beside the point. This man goes into practical living experience, exploring existence. He says pleasure is meaningless. Let's see what he's saying. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 1 to 3. He says, I said to myself, in other words, he is saying, come on, friend, myself, let's go. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure. You see, this is a crazy man. saying, okay, I'm going to literally go into what I wanted to study and learn, and let me see how that looks like. What conclusion I can draw. And then he says, come on, myself, come with me to a particular state of life in which I'm going to test myself with pleasure to find out what is good. Hold on to that phrase. To find out what is good. He is involving in empirical research. Just like going to the field and exploring something, and then out of that experience, theorizing the reality of life. He is not a pessimist. He is a realist who really wanted to experience life and who really wanted to conclude the reality of his experience from that particular point of life in which he is experiencing it. That's brilliant. And he says, I'm going to test myself with pleasure. If you want a philosophical terminology, this is hedonism. Egoistic hedonism. It's not even altruistic hedonism. This is egoistic hedonism, functions with the principle saying maximum pleasure to the self through maximum suffering of others. I will get you to work, I will enjoy the outcome of that. He says, I'm going to experience pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. And then I tried myself with laughter. I cannot believe this. And this man says, let me go into laughter and the merrymaking. And then he said, what does pleasure can I accomplish? And then he says, I tried cheering myself with wine. That's another aspect of merrymaking. Embracing folly. My mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. The intention is to find out what is good for human beings. So he is a realist, and he is exploring that. So he comes to the conclusion, pleasure is meaningless. Okay? And then secondly, he says, achievement is meaningless. I really adore this man because of the achievements he made. Look at this. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 4 to 11. I built houses for myself, planted vineyards. I made gardens, parks, and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I cannot say that word. How do we say that? Reservoirs. Is that correct? Reservoir. Okay, I'm not going to say it another time. It will be miserable for me. So to water groves of flourishing trees, I bought male and female slaves. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. And then he says, I gathered silver and gold for myself. I acquired male, female singers and a harem. And then he says, that's the delight of a man. Okay? Then he says, I became greater. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. Yet, when I surveyed, when I evaluated all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. What is he speaking about? In other words, so much of achievements, so much of gathering of stuff, gold, silver, human beings, slaves, vineyards, houses, gardens, trees, everything. Now that's part of the Australian dream as well. Acreage, backyard, front yard, grass, mandarin trees, whatever, all these things. Now, these are all part of my dream as well. So what? What is bothering this man? Look at the last expression he says. Nothing was gained. I like that. Do you know why? All these things seem to be not gains. They are not substantially lasting and valuable. That's what the concept of time taking us. If you watch the movie, the silly example I can use is Nemo. A great lesson in there. Nemo, the sunfish, runs away, and then he's caught by somebody and taken to Sydney maybe. And then the father fish is just going with the turtles and all those things to come to Sydney. And then once they got into the current of water, they were not swimming, that they were carried away and they end up in Sydney. Now that's the concept of time. We are caught up in this. And then you gather all these resources which are like to have money, like to have homes, like to have everything that is being mentioned here. This man had everything to the full. And then he says, these things are not considered to be gain. The person I can remember is Paul, standing at the foot of the cross, having all the manifold revelations of God. And he is making an assessment, evaluation of his past life in which he had a ship or two ships, I don't know, the education, the knowledge, the money, the tradition, the tribe from which he comes, and all those things. And then he considers knowing Christ. And he says, for the sake of knowing Christ, all the other things I consider to be rubbish because they are not worthy to be considered to be a gain. In other words, the validity of substance, the value of substance is not comparable. In other words, Solomon, as the writer, the preacher, is saying, I have all these things. My problem is not lacking anything. My problem is finding substance in all these things. That I can't find. Money comes, goes. Fruits come, go. And people are enjoying it. That's wonderful. Gone. Where is the substance? Where is the validity of everything? Where is the meaning of things beyond themselves? This is what if Ravi Zacharias would have been here, he would say, where is the wantic reference to everything? In other words, that sums everything that we can say here. That is the meaning, substance, validity, significance of everything that exists as my possession. So Solomon is struggling to find that substance in existence that is not there. So he said, achievement is meaningless. I'll come to another aspect later on. And then he says, okay, pleasure is not working for me. Substance, in other words, things are not working for me. Let me turn to wisdom. It was Socrates who said, by all means marry. Marriage is blessed. If you get a good wife, you are twice blessed. If you get a bad wife, you will become a philosopher. Now this man, Solomon, had many. He had many. He had a harem of his own. The number I don't want to speak out. In hundreds. Finally, he becomes a philosopher. Wisdom, he turns to. And then he says this. Ecclesiastes 2, 12 to 16. Then I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? Creativity. I saw that wisdom is better than folly. I like that. Do you know why? Recently I was listening to one of Ravi Sakarai's messages. And in that he uses an example. I'm going to borrow that. There was a man who lived a wicked life. And he dies in his wickedness. Very much burdensome to the community, to the family, children, to everyone. He died wicked. His brother comes to this pastor and asks, "Pastor, could you please do a holy funeral for my brother?" And the pastor is in puzzle. What funeral is the place where we speak lies? And this man, the pastor says, it's very difficult. He was not a believer. And then this man offers a huge sum of money to the pastor saying, "I'll give you this much dollars. All that you need to do during the service of funeral, you need to say, 'My brother was a saint.'" A couple of times. He was a saint, holy man. And the pastor looked at the money and said, "Okay." Received the money and wanted to do the funeral. And in the funeral service, he comes to the speech. People are listening. He said, "The man in the casket was wicked, he lived wicked, and he died wicked. He is sinful, he is evil, he was a horror to the family, he was a horror to the community. But he was a saint compared to his brother." Now here this man says, Solomon says, "I saw that wisdom is better than folly." Just as light is better than darkness, the wise have eyes in their heads, while the fool walks in the darkness. But I came to realize the same fate overtakes them both. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain? The gaining concept again by being wise. I said to myself, this too is meaningless. For the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. Here is a problem. The problem is, he's not saying wisdom is not good. He's not saying wise is not good. He is saying a philosopher, a theorist, a life which is not remembered is not good. In other words, a life worthily lived is narratable. In other words, Paul lived a worthy life. He is being narrated and recounted again and again. Jesus lived a life worthy of living. That life is remembered and recited and preached and preached and preached, lived and lived and lived. That's his problem. The problem is life ending by this life is not worth. Wisdom being buried with the wise man is not good. In other words, sometimes we get to our library in the college and get books out and throw them into the bin. And one of the comments they make is, the word of God and the wisdom of the wise is in the bin now. Then normally I have a comment. That is this. That's my fear. I don't want to write my second book because within no time my first book will be in the bin. In other words, think about those people who made history. That's his problem. The problem is, when I explore wisdom, when I gather things for human beings, what is going to be the gain for me? In other words, if I'm going to perish with the wicked of this world, if I'm going to perish with the unwise people of this world who are living a materialistic life, a life confined to this world, a life has no dream for the world to come, or there is no possibility for another existence or the continuation of the next existence, existence or this existence to that existence, then there is no gain. I'm a miserable man. I'm going to die with the unwise. In other words, he is not saying, I'm a miserable man, I'm going to die. He's saying, what's the gain if I die along with the unwise person and not remembered? In other words, he's talking about a legacy. But this man is talking about substance of life to be remembered and a life that is to be worth living. Toil is meaningless. Look at this. And then he turns to hard work and he says, Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 17 to 23, I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun because I must leave them to one who comes after me. And then coming to verse 22, he says, what do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days their work is grief and pain, and even at night their minds do not rest. In other words, he's saying, come on, man, I do all this hard work, hard labor. Now he is saying, one day I'm going to die like a dog, and somebody else is come and take over and enjoy it. What's the point? What's the point? Invest in the right place. That's what he's saying. I wanted to invest this in the right place. In other words, see, it's just like a saying, if you ask an Indian, why are you guys doing 2 ships, 3 ships, and 4 ships, and 24/7, when the husband comes and the wife is going and the wife is coming in and the husband is gone, everything is work and work and work. End of the day, the Indian mentality, or the Asian, I don't know, the Indian mentality is very simple. I have 2 children, I'm going to treasure up this, and if they are girls, all that I'm storing up is for those 2 boys who are going to come and join the family later on. They will enjoy what I'm gathering. This man is saying, that is a tragedy. What is the point of accumulating riches and wealth? And the next thing he is talking about is wealth is meaningless. It's not the hard labor is meaningless. You don't even get sleep. And here he says, wealth is meaningless. I don't know how many of us sleep. Honestly, I can't believe how peaceful is my sleep. I don't know why. Maybe we are tired or we are exhausted. I don't know why. I get to the bed, really deep, deep sleep. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 10 to 17. I'll just read those things which are highlighted. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. Verse 12. The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether they eat little or much, but as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. And then, verse 15, everyone comes naked from their mother's womb, so they depart. They take nothing from their toil. This is to his grievous evil. All their days they eat in darkness with great frustration, affliction, and anger. I'll tell you, closely observe some of our friends in our communities. Absolutely, they are in this chaos. They have money, they have house, they have things, but some of them lost their families, some of them lost their children. There's a good number of people living in frustration, affliction, and anger. According to the 2018 report of Australian Health Institute, the greatest burden of Australian health system today is anxiety. Anxiety. Why? We have everything. We are living in a blessed country. If you ask me, Xavier, you came from India, how is Australia? I would say it's heaven. What's wrong here? What is wrong with people? What is wrong with families? What is wrong with human beings and life? We are in frustration, we are in anxiety, we are in affliction, and we are in anger. What's wrong? We have everything. See? I was thinking Corona is going to take us down. No. The government is happy to inject millions into the system so that we will not fall. They did, which is a blessed experience. But money is not. That is going to set up a life and its hope. That's what the problem with this man. Let me go through. Unenjoyed life is meaningless. Finally, he says. It says, Ecclesiastes 6, verses 1 to 6. I have seen another evil under the sun, and it weighs heavily on mankind. God gives some people wealth, possessions, and honor, so that they lack nothing their hearts desire. But God does not grant them the ability to enjoy them, and strangers enjoy them instead. My goodness. I think it gave me a kind of understanding to see where my money is sitting. Is it sitting in life or people, or it is sitting somewhere? Once I am gone, everything else will be gone. Now this man says, this is a miserable situation of life if you are not able to enjoy your life. And then he says, a man may have 100 children, live many years, yet if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. Now, I think this is a huge point for us to think. Where are we in our lives? Can you find any meaning beyond what we are talking about here? That's the struggle of Solomon. So here, unenjoyed life is also meaningless. This is where preacher's message comes. He is saying meaningless, meaningless, meaningless. He is not saying everything is meaningless with God. He is saying everything is meaningless without God. In other words, under the sun, under the right of existence, it is meaningless once it is limited to that. But it has meaning when it comes to God. That's what he's saying. Look at this. Discern the ultimate good. He says, Ecclesiastes 6:12. I thought I will explore this from Ecclesiastes because you may be thinking, Xavier, Solomon is not realist. He is a realist. 6 verse 12 says, for who knows what is good for a person's life? During the few and meaningless days they pass through like a shadow, who can tell them what will happen under the sun after they are gone? In other words, Solomon is trying to explore what is good for human life. He is trying to say, friends, do not limit your life or the dream of your life to money only. Money is good. House is good. Resources are good. Relationships are good. But you have to have a dream that will take all these material items yonder, beyond this life. Find that something will go beyond this life. What is good? Who can tell people what is good? That's what I'm exploring. That's what he says. And then 2 verse 3. Part B says, I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heaven during their small life, which is shadowy. And he wanted to tell us something. Appreciate the good gift that God gives, that he gives to everyone. Look at this. Ecclesiastes 5:18 to 20. This is what I have observed to be good. And then he says, eat and drink and all those things. And then he says, God has given them, for this is their lot. Moreover, when God gives some wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil, this is a gift of God. This is a gift of God. Money is good if it is considered to be the gift of God. Home is good if it is considered to be the gift of God and used for His glory. And life is good and beautiful if it is considered to be a gift of God and used for His glory. And the last expression is brilliant for me. Do you know why? This is a gift of God, verse 20. They seldom reflect. Who? Those people who are given this gift will seldom reflect on the days of their life, which is the toil and hardship life, because God keeps them occupied with gladness of heart. Honestly, many Christians are not great rich people. They give away everything. All that we know is wash your clothes, take a shower, whether you eat anything or not, and come energetic. Where does the energy of life come from? That's what it is. It says God is not allowing these people, though they are going through all the troubles and pains and labor of human life as anyone else would do, but those people to whom the gift of God is given, He will keep them engaged in His kingdom with a hope, with gladness of heart, to enjoy and experience the goodness of life. Friends, where are you today? Are you engaged with the kingdom concerns? Are you reflecting upon the glories yet to reveal? Are you hopeful about the hope that is in Christ Jesus? Appreciate the good gift that God is involved. In other words, invoke God into materialism. Invoke God into your limited life, which you think will end in this life. Rather, it is going to continue. It will carry you further to one of the two destinies, whether you like it or not. I like that. God keeps them occupied with gladness of heart. A couple of years ago, I went to a church like this, and one of the musicians came to me and asked, Xavier, your kids are, I don't claim this, okay, that's their perception. It's not completely real. He came to me, how would you keep your family excited, energetic, and they are always happy? It's not true. But that's what he thought. The one thing I know is we don't have much money, but we do have money by God's grace for enough. And we don't have all the other things that Solomon can claim. But we have the joy of the Lord sitting in our hearts. Because from absolute darkness of Hinduism, the Lord uprooted me and planted in the grace of God. And He said, live well. It's His grace, it's gift that tells me whether you have stomach full or not. Engage with the gladness of God, which is centered around the Christ core, which is unshakable. Enjoy the gift of life. That's what Solomon is saying. He says, Ecclesiastes 5:18-20, a person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without God, who can eat and find enjoyment, I would say contentment and satisfaction? To the person who pleases Him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. To the sinner, I would say others who don't recognize Him, He gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to one who God pleases. In other words, both are insignificant tasks. One is enjoying with God life, and there is a meaning. Everything gets transformed into a glorious experience of life. The other one is working, and struggling, and anxiety, frustration, greed, and so on. And finally, the result is hand it over to someone who serves God. I like that. Accept the perfect gift. That's what James 1:17 says. God is a God gives good gift and perfect gift. Home is a good gift. Family is a good gift. And good job is a good gift. And all these things are good gifts. But he gives a perfect gift to make the good gifts eternal and lasting. That is the gift of his Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. He gave you the best gift and the perfect gift. And he said that transform everything that is material into an eternally valuable stuff of reality that will continue with you when you stand before the judgment seat of Christ. And he will call you, well done, my servant. Come home with all the treasures of the labor that you had in the world, and you did not leave them in the world. It continued with you through people, through the kingdom, through the mission, through the gospel, to eternity, and you have the crowns of life with you. The Lord gives perfect gift, that is Christ. If you embrace him, and everything transforms into eternity. Live your dream then with God. Ecclesiastes 12:13-14. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. What is the conclusion of the matter? Australian dream. Pointless? No. It has a point. What is the point? The point is very simple. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind, for God will bring every deed into judgment. In other words, the awareness of the impossibility of the possibility of death is void. Whether you like it or not, he is going to bring you up. He will retrieve you of death. Death is a passage into that retrieval, and in which he has a set of criteria. The framework that he established in the first place is going to look at your life, your actions, your decisions, your choices according to that framework. No matter what Satan says, no matter what philosophies say, no matter what theology is affirming, he is going to look at you, your work, your life, through that framework of life that God established. It will say good or bad, period. What is the point then? Let's ask the same question. You raised the same question, brother. I don't know how we came to that conclusion together. Australian dream. What is the point? As simple as this. Dreams and achievements in this life without God are meaningless, for they do not last beyond this world because they do not have the ability and the substance to continue and last. They are confined to this world. That's where you are bringing God's eternality into the substance so that it will continue to eternity. And then, dreams and achievements with God are meaningful and eternally lasting because they have the quality of eternity in it to last. Therefore, I would take two examples, just one more minute. Look at Jesus, who was eternal, entered into history, which is temporal. And he is sweeping, he is carrying this temporality with him, humanity, to eternity. At the moment he is up there. Yes, time enters into eternity, Brother Phil. Yes, I agree with you. Eternity came down, entered into temporality. At the resurrection, he is taking temporality to eternity. Now, we are given the opportunity to accept Jesus, accept God, who is eternal, so that we will enter into the God mission, and that will carry us to eternity as well, with all the values and all the blessings that God gave. Therefore, if you ask me, what is the point? The point is silly, simple, and it is decisive. This is what it is, friends. Therefore, without God, we are zeros. With God, we are heroes. More than conquerors who are able to transcend this world and beyond. Therefore, let's continue to hold on to this hope that is in Christ. What is the point of Australian dream? They are good. Do you want to make it perfect and eternally lasting? Embrace Christ and become a hero. May God bless you. Thank you very much.